London. London's grand estates and historic mansions, once the playgrounds of British aristocrats, now hosting lavish parties thrown by Russian oligarchs, Middle Eastern sheiks, and other foreign magnates. The city's iconic skyline, a symbol of British heritage, is undergoing a transformation that's more than just architectural. It's a seismic shift in power, influence, and cultural identity. But why is it that the old money families, who have held the keys to London's most prized assets for centuries, are cashing out? Why are the guardians of British tradition taking a back seat now? And most intriguingly, what does this mean for the soul of the city that's always prided itself on its rich history? The transformation is expected to be as shocking as it is fascinating. But before we begin, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. One. Heritage wealth versus instant fortune in London. London is the city of Big Ben, the River Thames, and money. Lots of it. But not all money is created equal, my friends. Oh no, there's a tale of two cities within this one city, and it's all about the cash. On one side, you've got the old money, the heritage wealth. These are the families who've been rich for generations. So long that they've probably forgotten what a mortgage even is. They live in grand estates, have last names you can't pronounce, and their kids go to schools with Latin mottos. It's a world of tradition, a world where money isn't just money, it's a legacy. Enter the new players, the instant fortune folks. These are your tech moguls, your entrepreneurs, the started from the bottom, now we're here crowd. They didn't inherit estates, they built empires, and they're shaking things up. They're buying up property, driving flashy cars, and dare I say, bringing a bit of bling to the British upper class. And the old guard? They're not too pleased. It's like a financial soap opera, and the drama is real. So what happens when these two worlds collide? Fireworks, that's what. The heritage wealth crowd sees the new money as flashy, tasteless even. They're all about subtlety, you see. A Rolex? Please, that's for amateurs. They'd rather have an antique pocket watch that once belonged to Winston Churchill. On the other hand, the instant fortune gang thinks the old money is, well, old, stuffy, boring. They want to bring a fresh vibe to the high society scene, and they're not afraid to ruffle a few feathers to do it. But here's where it gets juicy. The two groups are starting to mingle. We're seeing some form a crossover. A tech billionaire buys a historic mansion. A debutante dates an entrepreneur. It's like a reality TV show, but with much higher stakes. And the question on everyone's lips is, who will come out on top? Will the old ways win? Or is it time for a financial change of the guard? You see, heritage wealth is like a fine wine. It gets better with age. These families have assets that have been accumulated over multiple generations. Now, you might think that with all their wealth, these families would be front and center in the media, but you'd be wrong. Most of them prefer to operate behind the scenes. They're puppet masters, pulling the strings in politics and social classes. They fund campaigns, think tanks, and even social movements. But why so secretive? Well, it's all part of their strategy of stealth politics. They keep their cards close to their chest, avoiding public scrutiny while advancing their conservative agendas. But don't be fooled, while some billionaires openly support social causes, the majority are conservative, focusing on taxes and opposing government regulations. They're not philanthropic saints the media makes them out to be. 2. Obstacles to heritage wealth. But it's not all smooth sailing for our heritage wealth families. London's prime real estate is no longer their exclusive playground. International investors are swooping in, diving up prices and making it a game only for the highest bidders. But how did it get to this in the first place? Didn't the old money have a suffocating grip on the markets? Picture this, it's the early 20th century and London is buzzing. But not with the sound of money, rather the sound of war. You'd think that the aristocrats with their sprawling estates and political connections would be shielded from the chaos, right? Wrong. The wars drained the country's resources, and guess who had to foot the bill? The wealthy, of course. High taxes were imposed, and many had to sell off assets just to stay afloat. But it isn't over yet. The post-war period brought about decolonization, the empire was shrinking, and the economic benefits it provided were dwindling. The Suez Crisis of 1956 was a reality check. Britain was no longer the world superpower it once was, and this decline had a direct impact on the heritage wealth families. Their influence was waning, and their financial stability was rocked. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s, the world was changing, and Britain was no exception. The government introduced a series of legislative reforms, including higher taxes and stricter regulations on land and business ownership. The old money families found themselves cornered yet again. It's the mid-80s, and London's financial market is in a rut. The New York Stock Exchange is the big kid on the block, and London is lagging far behind. Something had to be done, and fast. Here's where Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady herself, and her finance minister Nigel Lawson come in. Together, they concocted a plan so audacious it could only be called the Big Bang. On October 27, 1986, the duo unleashed a series of reforms that turned the financial world upside down. Fixed commissions on securities trading? Gone. Restrictions on foreign firms? Lifted. Floor-based trading? Replaced by an electronic platform. But the Big Bang didn't just change the rules, it changed the players. Large banks swooped in, taking over old forms and reshaping the financial landscape. The 90s arrived, but still no signs of improvement, at least for the old money families. The economy was shaky and the stock markets were like roller coasters. Remember the dot-com bubble? It burst and took down many investments with it. But that wasn't all. The rise of hedge funds and other alternative investment platforms started to change the game. Being aggressive, they took big risks and often reaped big rewards. The heritage wealth families, with their conservative investment strategies, found themselves sidelined. But hold on, the 2000s were nothing short of a geopolitical earthquake. The Gulf War, the Iraq War, the conflict in Afghanistan, each of these had a global impact. Oil prices went through the roof, and the stock markets were in turmoil. For the wealthiest families, whose portfolios often included oil and other commodities, this was a disaster. Their assets were bleeding, and there was little they could do to stem the flow. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, the 2008 financial crisis hit like a wrecking ball. Banks were collapsing, property values were plummeting, and the heritage wealth families found themselves in a financial freefall. Estates that had been in families for generations had to be sold off to cover losses. It was a fire sale, and the buyers were often foreign investors looking for a bargain. The British aristocracy was selling its family silver, and it was a heartbreaking sight. 3. The new millennium's global magnates. But guess who's making an entrance? Global magnates from Russia and the Middle East. And they're not just here for a visit, they're here to stay. Take Roman Abramovich, for example. His 15-bedroom house in Kensington Palace Gardens is worth at least £150 million. That's right, £150 million. And he's not the only one. Oleg Deripaska, another Putin ally, owns a house in Belgrave Square that's so lavish it would make a Hollywood mansion look like a shack. Now, you might not believe this, but only 4 Russian nationals under British government sanctions appear on the UK's new property register. Talk about lack of transparency. And it's not just the Russians. Middle Eastern magnates have also joined the party. They're snapping up properties left and right, adding to the pressure on London's already sky-high property prices. It's like a game of Monopoly, but with real buildings and real consequences. Now, you might be wondering, why London? Well, the city has always had a certain allure. Its legal system is robust, its politics stable, and let's not forget the creamy stucco Victorian facades that make for the perfect Instagram backdrop. But there's more to it than just pretty pictures. London offered something that these global magnates couldn't resist, a chance to legitimize their wealth. Once their money was tied up in London's bricks and mortar, it was as good as clean. Clever, right? But these new players weren't just buying up properties, they were changing the very fabric of London's society. Areas like Knightsbridge, Kensington, and even parts of Highgate started to feel the impact. These were the playgrounds of London's heritage wealth families, and suddenly they found themselves sharing the sandbox with the new kids on the block. Areas that were once bustling with local residents are now ghost streets with properties owned by people who are rarely even in the country. And even if that wasn't enough, these global magnates are also influencing policy decisions and even getting involved in social causes. And I'm not talking about sponsoring a local football team, I'm talking about shaping policies and swaying political decisions. Traditional parties are finding themselves in a pickle, trying to balance the interests of their heritage-rich constituents with the allure of foreign investments. The results? You see, the influx of foreign capital is creating a divide. Not just among the haves and have-nots, but among the Brits themselves. Conversations at local pubs have shifted from football and weather to identity and sovereignty. And let's not even get started on the online debate. They're a whole different beast. The term Britishness is being questioned, redefined, and in some cases completely thrown out of the window. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and sharing so we can keep bringing more content like this. See you next time.